Peter Chen. He's political lecturer at the University of Sydney. He says that regardless of who wins the leadership ballot on Monday, the Australian Labor Party will ultimately lose this election. Peter, good to see you on a Friday morning, and these developments have been fast and furious. What happens next, of course, as Rudd arrives back in Australia?
Well, both camps in the party are going to be furiously attempting to convince members of the caucus to vote for the two leadership candidates, and we'll be having a ballot on Monday which will determine who will be the leader of the Labor Party. Most people expect that Kevin Rudd will put his hand up for the leadership over the weekend. He's obviously playing a media game where he's attempting to run that out over a number of particular kind of days. And then on Monday the ballot will happen. I think it's very likely at this point in time that Julia Gillard will remain leader of the Labor Party, but it's also likely that Kevin Rudd will get enough support amongst his colleagues that he will not be shamed into giving up his leadership ambitions. This issue is going to roll on until the end of the year, and it's very likely, unless something substantial changes, that Kevin Rudd will take another tilt at the leadership in November, December.
So even if Gillard wins this leadership vote on Monday, doesn't it kind of spoil her agenda?
Oh, absolutely. Her agenda is totally disrailed. This year was going to be a very interesting year for Julia Gillard. The major issue that had been occupying a lot of oxygen in Australia over the last Parliament had been the issue of the carbon tax. That gets introduced this year, and it's very likely that the prognostications by the opposition that the carbon tax would be a devastating blow to the Australian economy will not realise themselves. In addition, a lot of low-income Australians will benefit from the carbon tax through a range of tax cuts and advantages that they'll receive through that funding model, and that will actually support the base of the Labor Party. Now, this issue is obviously going to suck all the oxygen out of the air. That message will be lost, and it'll further undermine Gillard's ability to campaign on the strength of her administration. The irony is that Gillard has been in a weaker position with a minority government in Australia than Kevin Rudd was when he was the Prime Minister, and yet she's really achieved much more of her agenda than Rudd did when he was in the top job.
And how is this playing into Tony Abbott's scorecard, if you will? How does this work in his favour, this drama within the party?
Sure. Abbott has been doing very well. He's been on track to win the next election. This is gravy for him. He is just sitting back waiting for this to unfold. The Labor Party continues to tear itself apart. He wants this to continue as long as possible. It makes it easier for him to get elected in the next election. Personally, I don't feel that an Abbott-led government will be a very credible government, a very effective government. I think it has a number of weak frontbenchers who are going to come into his team. I don't think Abbott himself is a very impressive figure in terms of his leadership potential, but that doesn't matter because the next election has been handed to him on a plate.
Very interesting. I'm curious how things went so wrong so quickly for Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd. I mean, it's just remarkable that earlier this week he was a minister in the government, effectively working under her, and now they are intense rivals. Are we in a new era of politics in Australia?
No, this leadership dispute has been going on since Kevin Rudd effectively lost the leadership battle just before the last election in 2010. It's just been an undeclared conflict, and it has only come to the surface now. This was always going to happen at some point in time. Kevin Rudd feels that only he is the best person to lead Australia. He's a man with a great policy vision, but his ability to work with others in his own party is very limited, and that was the problem that befuddled his government. He went from being a massively popular figure to quickly burning through a lot of his popularity in his term in office, and while he certainly polls much better than Julia Gillard in, say, leadership polling, I feel that his support is actually weaker than his camp probably are going to present it as being to members of Parliament who are very concerned about losing their seats in the next election.
And are you surprised here, final question for you, the venom that people like Treasurer Wayne Swan have unleashed against Kevin Rudd? It really seems like the civility has been taken out of this, and now it's down to personal attacks.
Politics in Australia is very robust. We say what we mean and we mean what we say often. I think it is unusual, but it does demonstrate that the Labor Party is a very weak party in terms of its internal kind of structure. Most of the political parties in Australia, the major political parties, have been losing members over many years. They're not the robust internal institutions that they once were. Their capacity to deal with rogue individuals is limited, and the Labor Party has a bit of a history in pointing figures who, at the end of the day, might not have survived a more robust leadership system. Certainly Mark Latham, who led the party into the failed election in 2004, was a similar figure who had a degree of popularity, but when the pressure came to be a real leadership figure, really wasn't up to the challenge. And I think Kevin Rudd shares some of those limitations as well.
Peter, we have to leave it there. Wish you a good weekend. Peter Chen, political lecturer at the University of Sydney.